Hello everyone. I wanted to quickly go through a quick tutorial on how to use Verfolio. After you've created an account, you can log in and you'll first see that there's no projects. So we're going to make a project and we're going to test Google. You can see that when I write this in, it comes up with an ID automatically. This will be used while generating IDs for your steps and whatnot. So you can change this if you want to something that's a little more recognizable, whatever makes sense to you. So we'll hit done. That makes the Google project. So now we need to add a test case. So I'll hit this little plus down here again, and we'll name this test case searching. Again, same thing. You're going to have an ID generated that change that. You want to describe the objectives. This can often be use cases, just a list of use cases, or just describing what it is we're going to try to achieve in this search, and set up instructions. Here's where you can write out if you need an active account already or anything that needs to happen before you begin the test. In this case, we don't really have any logins or anything that needs to be set up, so we don't have to add anything. So we'll hit done. And there we go. Now we've got our searching test case. And now we can start adding steps. Again, just hit the plus sign down here. And this is just a action-reaction kind of sequence of steps. You can have some side effects in here, but that's usually kind of an edge case, not something that you normally would typically use. And of course, the big question with any project is just how detailed do you get with your actions and reactions? And that's a bit subjective to the project and just how much you know. One of the main elements for Verfolio is the projection testing, not just the regression testing, where at the beginning of the project you should be able to put in all what you think the action reactions will be throughout the project, and you can kind of have that as a baseline and measure how mature your project's getting. But even in a regression testing scenario, that works fine, and it depends on how much you know, right? And what I would suggest is don't worry about it being perfect. Just get it in there and what you know in, so that way you can begin to refine. You can always add more steps, change the steps around later, so don't worry too much about the details. I'm going to cancel out here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and import a file, and you can append these steps to the existing test, or I can just replace all, right? So in this case, because I have no existing steps, it's really not going to, both options are effectively the same thing. So I've now imported that, and you can see I just have 3 very basic steps. Obviously, this would depend on just all the various details, but this is just for an example, right? So now we're here, and if I ever wanted to, I could always print this list out so I could hand it to somebody else if I wanted to, things like that, and I can edit any one of these steps. You can use Markdown, and you can get hints on how Markdown works here, or a full guide. So if I wanted to like bold things or anything like that, I can use kind of Markdown notation. I can preview that to see what that's going to look like and italicize that text, things along those lines, right? So we'll hit done here. Now that we have our test script ready, we can start testing. And I can pretty much hit this anywhere. It's right here in the test script. If I go back to the beginning, you'll see it here in the project, or even on the test cases itself. So I can start testing from anywhere. When I hit this, I only have the one test case at this time, so it's only got this one option. But if I had multiple test cases, I could start a test with only particular features or test cases covered. This would be the case if I had certain tickets or bug fixes that I wanted to just test a certain segment of the app. I didn't want to do the whole thing. Or you just could do a full projection or regression test by having everything checked. Well, I'll go ahead and hit start. And there we go. All right, so now our testing has begun. You can see we've got one test listed here. You can see there's no progress yet, and I can either download the reports and everything as they are right now, or obviously I can start testing. So I'm going to go through here, and you can see the steps, and of course I'm going to go to Google per the instructions. So that step worked, right? So we read that I should be able to see the Google search page. There should be a text field and 2 buttons, and that worked. Great. So you can see now it's tracking my progress over time. And if I go to the beginning, you can see I'm 33% done with this test. I'll go back in. Okay, so the next step is type test in the text field, and we expect that under the text field, we'll see an insight with a bunch of results. So let's try that. It worked. So we're going to check that one off. And we're almost done. Let's see. Click on one of the results. All right, so let's try that. We're going to click on this top result. Sure enough, we get search results. All done. Now you can see the progress bars are all full. You can come here, see the progress bars are all full. And if we go back to projects, we can see that one is in progress. We can resume that testing, and this is going to stay in progress until I hit end testing. And there we go. Now I could restart that if I wanted to, but now I can go to projects. You can see I could restart a new test. I can go to the history and always pull up previous tests. I can now print this as a PDF, or I can download a report. The main difference is the print as PDF has a little bit more graphical detail because it's using the printer method, and you can see what it might look like here. Whereas the report on the top level is more clinical, I guess you could say. It's a little more just straightforward. It would list any problems you had here out, and you can use this, kind of attach this to a ticket to just kind of have a higher level summary. Okay, so let's take this from the top again, and let's see what it might look like if a test script failed. So we're going to start another test with the same project. And there we go. We can see that it's now started again. And we're going to go in and let's pretend like we've been going through the tests again. And then when we get to this last one, something goes wrong. We don't get the results for some reason. What we can do is either use the More drop-down to set the status to something other than past, or we can kind of just click it more than once and cycle through the different options. That resets it back. So I want to set it as failed. And you can see when you set it as failed, it's going to ask you to add a note if you want to. And you can describe what failed. And of course, we'd put more detail than that in, but for example's sake, we'll do that. And you can see our note has been added. We can edit this now. It's worth noting you can actually change the type of message or the type of note by clicking this. So if it was just something you wanted to inform somebody on, or it was just something you wanted to note, you could change the type. It changes that type. And now that that error is in here, we can see it in the reports. You can see that it's noted as failed. And in our report, we have all the notes that are given and which step they were given for. You can see our progress bar indicates the level of success, and we can hit end test. You can always go back and review the results. We now have this in the history. You can see that it had 2 successes, 1 fail. You can always reopen it, reprint that report. And there you go. Now we've got our test script and we're ready to begin. Thank you very much.